say for yourself?
I'm wasted.
So our journey began at El Calafate, home to the Torres Glacier, which me and my travel partner Bill were at the day before. Now we had to walk to the 8 a.m. bus that was going to take us to our next destination. Our route was going to look something like this. Start in El Calafate, take the bus to Puerto Natales, Chile, and then end up in Torres Del Paine National Park the next day to start the W trek. But despite how easy this sounded on paper, our quest to enter the park would not be as simple as we thought. We hopped in the bus and started our route, looking out the window at the endless flat and dirt-filled ground that makes up a majority of Patagonia. Everything was going smooth, we were making good time, and the bus was running how it was supposed to. Eventually, we pulled up to this rest stop for people to get food, use the bathroom, and stretch their feet at a place named La Esperanza, which was effectively in the middle of nowhere. After everyone got back on the bus to leave, we sat there not moving for around 30 minutes. Next thing you know, the bus driver comes in to explain that our bus had been stopped at the Chilean border. Apparently, our bus wasn't authorized to drive on this specific day in Chile, meaning it couldn't go into the country at all. So as a result, we had to get out of the bus and wait for another one to come pick us up, with no certainty of when this new bus would arrive.
Yeah, so what are we doing? Where are we? Oh.
After a couple hours of losing our minds and pacing back and forth, while eyeing the former bus driver who remained at the location in order to sense when the new bus might come, the new bus finally arrived. Hell yeah, we both thought, we were back on track, but damn we'd be wrong. After making it to the border in the new bus, we all got out to have our passports checked, which took an hour or so, and then all piled back in, waiting for the border police to give us the okay. However, this didn't come. As the last person boarded, the bus driver announced another problem.
Another one.
Apparently, this bus also had a restriction that prevented it from traveling to Chile, but only through the specific border we were currently at. Therefore, in order to get into the country, we needed to go through an alternative border, which meant backtracking the way we just came.
I want to die.
This time, instead of going through 293 towards Casa Viejas, we would be going through a little town named Rio Turbio. After the 2 hours of backtracking, another border checkpoint where our passports were taken by the bus driver and then scanned inside to speed up time, causing the bus to resemble a classroom where a teacher was taking attendance, we finally made it to the final border. We were exhausted, but also happy it was almost over. At this point, we had been traveling for a little over 12 hours, going from 8 in the morning to now 8:45 p.m. at night. What's crazy is, when we arrived, we noticed a sign saying that the border was closing at 9:30 p.m. So if we were any later, we'd be either forced back to Argentina or stranded. Luckily though, we did make it through, and finally, after what felt like years, we arrived and checked into our hostel in Puerto Natales, delusional as ever.
Yeah. It do be like that. Alright. Okay, see ya. The sky over there is pretty cool. All of them are Mercedes, every single one. Our bus today was Mercedes. Is he still playing phone? Oh, is he in there? Is that the hub? Oh, it was that. He's still playing phone. Oh, right. Are you winning some?
After 4 to 5 hours of sleep, we woke up at 6 a.m., had a great breakfast at the hostel, and caught the bus to Torres Del Paine National Park. It took around 2 hours to get there, and as we drove in, it felt like we were getting deeper into a lush valley. We then made it to the ranger station, where we bought a ticket. However, for whatever reason, both our credit cards didn't work, so we had to buy the tickets online, which took longer than we wanted it to. After that small hassle, we found out that we needed to take a second bus to Central Sector, the starting point of the trek, which would be 5 pesos in cash. Of course, we didn't have any cash, but luckily we asked one of the staff and they said that there would be someone with a card reader at Centro. When we arrived on site, we quickly followed a path to our tents. After checking in with the PDI receipt, which apparently is super necessary for immigration and if lost could prevent you from checking in anywhere in Chile, but is simply a flimsy piece of paper that could get lost in an instant, and so it makes no sense to why no one tells you how important this is at the border. and how this is actually a thing. We threw down our bags in an outdoor holding area because the tents weren't ready yet, made sure we grabbed water from the nearby sinks, and began the trek. In today's hike, we were going from Los Torres Campground, otherwise known as Central Sector, up to Base Torres Lookout, otherwise known as the Towers. We started at 10:30 a.m., facing the same mountain we saw coming in, but this time it was right in front of us for all to see. The trail started out quite straight, going over a few bridges until eventually it began to go uphill. Pushing up the rocky terrain, it was a sight to behold, as it was our first encounter with these red flowers that were blooming all over, and let me just say, it was not our last. These things were all over the place. As we climbed higher, we could see the vast amount of mountains in the distance, and also the beginning of the luscious blue lake. This uphill eventually led us to another camp called Camp Chileno, where we rested for a bit to drink some water and eat some snacks. I also went to the bathroom where they wanted to charge me to use it, but the guy was a homie and let me go in for free. After this, we continued on, and made our way through these valleys that felt like we had just jumped into the branding on a Poland Spring bottle. We ran into horses too, and later found out you could just skip the hiking entirely and rent a horse to complete the trek instead. No way we were actually going to do this, but nonetheless, it was still cool seeing the horses go throughout the trail. And after a while, we were finally at the base of the towers. The final climb from here was steep, yet extremely enjoyable, as not only was a beautiful day out, but also because there were so many people around to share the climb with, making it feel as if we were all completing it together. And when we finally made it to the top, well, towers were an incredible sight, and really hard to explain in words. You need to hike it yourself to really understand what I mean. In a sense, it felt like something alien, or from actual aliens, as the entire spot was circular, like a comet or asteroid had just struck, causing a huge crater in the ground. The water was crystal clear and blue as well, as most water in Patagonia is, and the tower-like rocks stood tall, almost blocking the sun from above. The whole experience was just otherworldly. We stayed up there for a while, taking everything in, eating some snacks, and letting the hot sun beat down on us, until we eventually made our way back down, arriving back at Central Sector around 7 p.m. In total, it took us 9 hours.
It has this ladder and all that, and this is after, how many miles? Like 20 miles? 16 miles? 12 miles? I guess 12 miles, people are saying. However long it was a good hike. Yeah. Cool, man. Cool. Let's have food.
It was the next day and time to walk 10 miles to Francis Sector from Central Sector. Most people usually walk from Central to Los Cuernos and then Francis the next day, but due to us booking everything late, we had to stay in Francis instead, which meant we had to walk a couple more miles. Heading out at around 9 a.m. this day, we decided to get an earlier start than the day before. Today's hike featured Nordenskjold Lake, which seemed to be endless as we walked along the path. There was also a bridge that we may have had too much fun on.
Oh.
The trail was much more quiet than the towers, yet extremely peaceful.
Yeah, it opens up.
It again felt like a different dimension. In time, and after many hours of hiking, we arrived at Cuernos, and then Francis at 6 p.m., having hiked for roughly the same amount as we did the day before, 9 hours. From here, we checked in again and made our way to our new tents. This time, we were in a heavier wooded area, and instead of being on a campsite on dirt, we were on a campsite on planks. Our plan was to hike through Francis Valley to the Británco lookout, which would be 7 miles, then into Grande for an additional 7 miles, where we finished the day by checking into the Vertices Lodge. We began at Camp Italiano at 10 a.m., where we dropped off our big bag and used our smaller camelbacks to hike up the first section. At this point, we were both exhausted, and to make matters worse, Bill had come down with a fever the night before. I can't imagine how brutal the hike must have been for the dude, because it was tough even when healthy. The reason for this was how strong the sun had been, which caused us to become severely sunburnt and dehydrated. So much so that we both ran out of water in our camelbacks before we made it back to Italiano, which hadn't been an issue for the entirety of the hike. In general though, and despite the pain, the hike was fairly enjoyable and very scenic, with flowing rivers and big rock-like structures at every angle. There were also a bunch of avalanches. The viewpoint at the top was also nice, resembling the theme of much of the area, which included numerous mountains. We took some time to stand and walk around the giant rock that was the lookout point to take some pictures, and then made our way back down to Camp Italiano again, getting back around 5 p.m. The walk had felt like it had taken us all day, but we still needed to get to our final destination, Grande. So we rested for 20 minutes, refilled our water, retrieved our bigger bags again, and started the last stretch of the hike. And this is what it looked like. Finally, we made it to Grande, essentially completing the W trek in length.
Right there, in a second.
As we arrived to check into our room at the lodge, it felt like I had almost hit a wall. From the heat of the day to the sheer amount we had just walked up to this point, and the sunburn on my face, all I really wanted to do was lay down and eat. Once we checked in and showered, we ate probably the most rewarding dinner of the trip, and possibly of all time. We absolutely dug into it, and it was fantastic. Now, the only thing that wasn't fantastic was having to share a room with 6 other dudes because private tents weren't available. And well, after getting through a noisy night, Bill wasn't doing too well, so I decided to complete a bit of the Great Glacier trek myself. The Catamaran was coming to pick us up at 1 p.m., so the hike had to be quick. This was okay because at this point, I was extremely burnt out. It also happened to be super windy, probably the most wind there had been for the entirety of the trek, and for some reason, I only brought my sweater and not my overcoat, which was a huge mistake because it was absolutely freezing. When the glacier was in view, I stepped on this giant rock and took a video or two, thinking about just how far we had come. I then proceeded to walk back to the camp, and then waited outside in the wind and cold for the catamaran to finally come. When it did, we made our way inside. And as it sailed across the blue North Shore Lake, we looked out its windows completely cooked, witnessing the very trail we had just traversed for the last 3 days. It felt sort of surreal, and also unfair that the boat could sail the same distance we went in a matter of minutes. It then dropped us off at not the ranger center we were at before, but at a different location that was kind of confusing. Walking on the side of the road, we finally made our way back to the intersection, in what felt like the middle of nowhere again. Shivering from the cold, we waited here for at least an hour until our bus finally arrived. And when we got inside the bus, this happened. Luckily, this time around, there was no delay. The bus brought us back to Puerto Natales, we checked into our next hotel, and that was that. We completed the W trek at Torres Del Paine National Park in Patagonia, walking roughly 40 miles over 4 days. In the end, I'm super grateful I had the resources to go on a trip like this in the first place. It was truly one of a kind and something I hope to never forget, which is half the reason I created this video in the first place. The other half is so I can influence and encourage others to go on this trip, especially if you found this video and are on the fence about going. What I will say is this, you will not be disappointed in the slightest, and it will be one of those trips you look back on for the rest of your life and say, I'm happy I did that.